already met me, Stella, and Sajid gave a nice introduction to himself in the beginning of tonight. So together with us, we also have Travis and Mariuka. So Travis, why don't you give us an introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name is Travis Spencer. I'm the founder of a company called Curity. My background is in computer science and software engineering. I also holded a master's degree in business. I'm American, living in Sweden now for 14 years. And my specialty is digital identity, and that's what we're working on at Curity, is to help our customers to secure their APIs and to know who's at the other end of the wire so that they can decide if they should allow access or not.
Thank you.
My name is Markka-Niina. I flew over from Helsinki, Finland, and my company Osango is doing all kinds of innovative things with business models and APIs. Most of the time APIs are somewhere there, and also giving product management and architecture consulting.
Awesome. So why don't we get started with the discussion on security first? Security is on top of everyone's mind today. I think it's the highest priority for most companies within the IT domain, and we see increasingly more attention being drawn to this topic in media, for example. So Travis, when it comes to APIs, how do you think that AI can affect the security of APIs?
I think that AI can help a lot with detecting anomalies and noticing different usages of an API, so that as an API provider you can start to recognize, like, this doesn't make sense, this is out of the ordinary, and maybe you then need to take some different action. So anomaly detection is definitely something I think that AI can help with vis-a-vis security. I think also, like, a lot of the security systems in an API can be complicated software and complicated systems. And so asking an AI, like we saw before in the chat, to be able to say, like, how could I do this, or could you configure that, is something that API could do AI could help us to secure APIs more and to help us configure things correctly. And those are a couple of things that spring to mind.
So AI is mainly a tool to be helping security, or like a helpful tool within security?
I think for now I would definitely keep the human in the loop. And I don't think I would allow the AI to make decisions about security, but more find anomalies and then report those to a person. What should I do now with this situation that I've detected? Do you want to ask for some additional kind of authentication? Do you want to slow down access? What is it you want to do here? So I think keeping the human in the loop is very important at this point in AI, just because it's maybe not quite ready.
Yeah.
Or as a society, I don't know that we're even quite ready to let AI do those sort of things for us, or at least maybe we shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah, Mariuka, you're working a lot with security for your
Well,
customers.
we're trying to avoid working with security. But what happens is a lot of times we still have to advise the humans to deal with things, and I think what we've found out, like, for example, sometimes companies have difficulties understanding how, let's say, OWASP vulnerabilities are going to affect them, and especially the new top 10 from last year. It's like having these process workflow stuff and other weird things that people have hard time understanding. So we have actually used Gen AI to develop, like, specific use cases for their industry. Like, this is how you can be affected, or this is how you should actually think about what kind of things you should test more thoroughly. It's not like there's a step ahead coming in some of our customers where they will actually be using Gen AI to even come up with security and performance and other tests for their APIs. But I think that's kind of an interesting place to go to, and of course API design overall.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how AI and generative AI can be used as tools to help in many different parts of from security to software development. And that's actually one of the main concerns around the rapid development of AI and Gen AI, that it can take jobs from human workers and that type of concerns. And Sajid, I know that you work a lot with software developers and software development as well. Do you think that there's a risk that AI will take jobs within software development and programming and such?
Well, not immediately, but probably in future sometimes, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure if we use AI as a productivity tool, then it will help us generate more code or better code, as Travis was mentioning, like it can help humans, like, okay, find anomalies. Let's say you have a pile of API logs or whatever you have, whatever you give to the AI, and then AI will look at it, probably give us some hints like how to fix it. Similarly, I have noticed like AI is pretty good at debugging. So sometimes, you know the concept of rubber duck, when you put a rubber duck with you and you can actually explain the code to someone. So that rubber duck role can be played by AI actually. You can talk to AI, you can ask about certain things in the code, but in the end, as both of you mentioned that humans has to make the final decision. Like human will click the button, human will do the action. Okay, whether block this IP address or do this and that. So AI will not replace developers, but a developer using AI will replace other developers who are not using AI.
Mm.
And I have to say, I've been playing the rubber duck in a lot of teams successfully, but also like I think that the developers might be threatened by people, let's say like me, who I know how to code, though I try not to code, but I'm not a developer. I'm like a tech savvy product manager slash business owner, and I think the difference is that I know typically that what problem do I want to solve and how to say it out loud, how to type it in. And if I can do that, and then I can even test the code that it produces, I'm a threat to developers. Because a lot of times the problem is not how to produce really nice code or really nice APIs. The problem is that somebody needs to come up with an idea and a problem and understand if this thing solves that problem. With APIs, I think there's an extra problem which is related to, like, let's say, if a developer doesn't even know OpenAPI spec, exists or OAuth 2 or anything else, they will just, code their, I'm doing a JSON file here and I'm calling it an API thing. And I mean, if they interact on that level with the Gen AI, it will not make them better developers. It will just make them like slightly faster doing the shitty stuff that they shouldn't be doing in the first place. So it's only as smart as the human asking these questions.
Yeah, and another important thing that you were mentioning here. So if you remember the era before, you would not remember, I'm pretty sure, before the sewing machine, like, I mean, people used to stitch clothes with needles and threads with hands, and it would take a lot of time, right? So people thought, okay, we are enjoying the process of stitching clothes. Actually not. We enjoy a process of creating design, fashion, good clothing, choosing good fabric, and then experimenting with the different types of design based on where we live. So when the sewing machine came, when it was invented, obviously it accelerated the entire process of creating clothing. That means we were able to be more creative. We could experiment a lot. So this is how I see AI. AI is like a sewing machine to tailors. So they can actually experiment quite fast. They can actually see, okay, which kind of design will work and will not work. And sometimes they also use AI to actually reflect on the output. So this is called the self-consistency or the reflection method in AI models. A lot of AI models can actually review their own output. So that's how I see AI helping developers, not replacing them right now.
Yeah.
When I was starting my career, my father-in-law said to me, Travis, I think that good software engineers will always be in high demand anywhere in the world. So, if you're writing code and if you're really good at it, you'll always have a job. And I think that AI probably doesn't threaten those who are very good at it. Maybe those who are very bad at it, like you were talking about, that they could also maybe help those people get a little bit better. But I think if your goal is just to be really, really good and excellent at your craft, because it is a craft, like a sewer, like a tailor, I think you'll always have a job.
I have to comment on that because we had this interesting discussion with very, very senior API gurus in Helsinki, and there were like some engineers, and then there were like education and other humanistic people like me. And the engineers in the group were like, I hate Gen AI, I hate Gen AI, because it never does what I want it to do, and it gives me multiple different answers, like what we were hearing from Aviamatic. And I think that was kind of like, the problem is because you have to treat it almost like a human, you need to actually discuss it. It's kind of your summary intern that does mistakes, but when you guide it, it might go more and more into the right direction. So I think this is also like, if you're like that kind of like silo engineer type of like true false binary is good person, then you're probably not going to be as good without extra learning with AI than the other person who might be more kind of flexible and creative with it and treat it more like a human.
And today's AI models actually need a lot of instructions. So if you do not give them good instructions, they will not even give you good output, even if it doesn't matter how easy the question is. So we call it one-shot prompting. Like you ask a question, you get back probably a mediocre answer or hallucination in many cases if you do not give them, if you do not ground their responses, let's say with the RAG approach, what Adil was mentioning, or there are several other approaches like that. So yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. And Marjukka, you are working a lot with questions in regards to API strategies, right? So do you think that AI can also be helpful when it comes to API strategies, and that these two are somehow related?
I'm brave enough to say yes, because I think that sometimes humans need help innovating things. People are very good at thinking about the stuff that they know, but generally very bad at thinking about the stuff that could be or should be, but isn't yet happening. And what we've done is that originally we have used innovative methods to create kind of like new business models and opportunities, and kind of used things like opposite thinking and things like that to get the people in to the right mindset. But now what we can give them is like a faster way of experimenting. Like basically you were saying that this creates a lot of experiments. And when you teach the AI well and you teach the humans well to use the AI, you can actually come up with interesting solutions. And we tested this out actually in Helsinki a couple of weeks ago, that we had this Baltic Sea Sustainability Challenge. And we basically said, look, here's a tool, use it, create as many solution ideas as we can, and we are now going to use them to kind of see what came out of it, and how is that going to be coming up as an innovative strategy. But I think the question there is that, are you doing an AI strategy where APIs are a side kick kind of a situation, or are you leveraging your own and other people's APIs to make a business strategy? Or are you thinking that API strategy is just a technical IT strategy kind of a thing, where like, what kind of API management solution are we going to choose is the main key thing.
Right. Now, I want to move back a little bit to the security question. Travis, I know that your company, Curity, is working with a lot of companies over the world, like globally. Have you seen that there are some cultural differences when it comes to how API designs and security are being done across the world, or compared to Sweden or Europe?
I think that everyone, if you separate them by thousands and thousands of miles over thousands and thousands of years, they come to ultimately different conclusions about fundamental things in life. So when you look at security, thankfully there's a lot of uniform thought, which makes it easier for companies like Curity to provide a solution that could work all around the world. But you do end up with different jurisdictions, which have different laws and different kind of approaches to things, like open banking. In Europe, we were talking about it before, about how Europe is very regulation centric and starting to regulate things prior to things being done, whereas in America, the philosophy is more on small government and trying to stay out of regulation and letting the market decide things. So that sort of cultural difference then can lead to different solutions which could need to be solved in different ways. And so I think open banking in the US versus Europe, for example, then is going to look quite different. And so I think cultural differences definitely do play into security and the solutions that people create.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
Because we did in 2018 we did this API Economy 101 book where we collected all sorts of research. And one interesting bit about exactly that was that because there is a different level of trust in different cultures and countries, that actually results into different technical solutions. And one thing is that, for example, in Finland we have this kind of, in open banking, we have this trust network where everybody trusts each other, and you can use bank identity for like everything, like government operations and stuff like that. It works almost in Sweden, except that there are some weird token and other things that messed up stuff. But it's like when you go away from the Nordics, like that's a technical problem. It's not a trust problem. But when you go away from the Nordics, let's say to the Baltics or further away, then you start getting this kind of less trust. And actually, there was a research that said that because of this less trust, there were things like kind of these different authentication methods, like you used Google sign-in, or you used different kinds of other sign-in solutions because there was a market for them, because there was no societal trust network of, like, you didn't have any other options. Whereas in Finland, they never succeed because there is no problem. So.
Yeah. Now, when we're talking about AI, we often talk about generative AI these days, and I know that Sajid is a kind of an enthusiast when it comes to learning about generative AI, and you're even part of our technical field community on AWS. So I'm very curious if you have any idea what the next big thing of Gen AI could be.
I think I have the idea. Okay. So I had a talk recently about AI agents. So AI agent, I think, is the next big thing in the generative AI space. And like Adil was mentioning about the non-determinism of the AI model's responses, right? So we can't be 100% sure exactly we will receive the same response each time. Sometimes we get wrong responses, like inappropriate responses that we call hallucination, that Adil mentioned. And when you marry the non-determinism of AI models with the deterministic code, this is where agent come into place. So agents can actually help your AI models call third-party APIs or your internal APIs, because AI models does not know. If you ask ChatGPT, let's say, or any AI model, if you ask them what is the time right now, they will not be able to tell you the current time. If you ask them what is the weather like right now, which is not that great, by the way, but they will not be able to tell us, or they hallucinate, it's very good, which is actually wrong. So the point is, if we want them to give us real-time answer with the help of, let's say, some API or some other internal system, then we need to give them access to agents. So agents is the next big thing, and I'm pretty sure a lot of API developers, or developers in general, will be focusing on the development of the agents. So I already see, in my talk I also already mentioned, I see agent marketplace coming very soon, where you will have a lot of different types of agents. For example, you might have a security analyst agent that could help you do a lot of stuff in your company, looking at your, let's say, your scene logs or something else, your access logs, and then trying to help you a lot with a lot of actions even. So I think the agents are the next big thing. You will see agent marketplaces, you will see multi-agent communication. Probably you will have developers who will build agents with their competence, and then they will put it somewhere in a marketplace, and then we will be able to leverage them. There will be open source agents, there might be some proprietary agents that can do a lot of interesting things. So I definitely put my focus on the agents these days.
I agree. We have already customer cases where that is being developed and used, and the kind of like giving context with APIs and binding the context very like strictly to some set of data. But what I'm also seeing is that all the forums are full of like developers who would love to do already that, but can't because there is no proper monetization way of like actually exposing them out, unless AWS has a genius solution for that. But I think that's kind of where things are a little bit stuck. And of course then there's the whole question of, because they are using, like, dealing with your data, how trusted are they, and like how are you going to verify them, and are there going to be some standards because they need to expose APIs to be working properly. And I'm not just trying to invent here problems, but I agree that if these problems get solved, then that's going to definitely be a thing.
I think these are real problems, and a lot of people are working on it. For example, in the security space, a lot of people are working on it. And if you know about the EU AI Act, that is also one way of like making sure your AI systems are responsible. They are protecting human rights. They are not violating anything. They are not misusing the data, or they are not. Or people not building AI systems that are actually misusing or violating the fundamental rights of humans. So there are things happening right now, and obviously this is a new area, new domain. I mean, you would hear about new models coming up every other week, or probably every week nowadays. I don't know. So a lot of things are happening. You can even fine tune these models, make them a little bit better. But again, I mean, these are very relevant questions, and still there are challenges, obviously.
But can you elaborate? I don't understand. Like, to make an agent, why would I need an API? I can make an agent without an API. So could you explain how they go together a little bit more?
So when you have any AI model, so there is a technique called chain of thought prompting. So when you ask a question to AI model, you can ask your AI agent, okay, tell me what you are thinking step by step. So what happens when when the AI models start spitting out their thought process, that is the time when you can intercept on the thought process and actually inject some code there. For example, if you tell your agent, okay, you have access to tools, and one of the tools is weather API. Okay, you give them API specification, you give them all the description about the API, and whenever somebody asks you about the weather, rather than telling you the weather, why don't you just call this API? Okay.
Okay, so you can make an agent without APIs, but by using the API, you can
Exactly.
Make it
like,
smarter. So then you can
enhance
do
its
this
knowledge.
kind of ice cream weather case.
Exactly.
Okay. So
and
it's not just
tell,
like data based on the model, but
Exactly.
data based
So
on
data
other
source.
sources.
Yeah.
Right.
Instant data source, especially for banking and things. Yeah.
Exactly. And also, this is the way to provide context to your model. So one way of providing context is RAG approach. That means you actually have long-term memory, right? You have documents, you have stored them somewhere, but how often can you update those documents?
Yeah.
Because
The indexing will take forever.
It takes forever, but sometimes you need a real-time access. Let's say I'm a user, and I want to see my bank account, or I want to understand something. So that is the time when I will use AI agents, where generative AI will actually give me human-like responses, but actually it will call behind-the-scene API, and it will fill in all the parameters that are required.
And
for the API.
Zapier is already, for example, and Zapier-like tools are already kind of doing that, because they already have these kind of workflow capabilities and the capability to ask from APIs. So that was, for example, what we used with the Baltic Sea case, because we had to kind of take input, but then we had to ask a few questions, and then we needed to combine stuff from different sources to come to another more innovative solution, because you can't do that with just prompting, or it will just be very limited or very hallucinating.
Yes.
So Travis, do you agree? Do you also see agents as something then coming when it comes to security for APIs?
I think you could. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it as a thing per se, but I think that having some agent there to help you, like if you're monitoring a SOC or something, and being able to use that real-time data that you're getting there from all those different sources, together with a model of anomalies that you've seen in the past, like we were talking about, I think that that could be quite helpful, and it kind of ties into your question then: is the SOC operator going to go out of business? I don't, lose his job. I don't think so. It's just going to be a tool to help that person to be better at their job. So I think I haven't seen it yet, but I can definitely imagine like somebody saying that it could be the next thing.
But let's say, like, take your observability example from earlier. Like, if we had a web shop and there were some transactions, like somebody's buying clothes or something, and then there's traffic, and then you try to figure out, is this legit traffic?
Yeah.
You don't actually know it unless you know, were there actual users trying to buy some stuff? Were they actually real users? Like, you have the fraud detection APIs and stuff for that, but then you look at the API traffic, and then you maybe look at the payments API traffic, and then you actually look at the warehouse stuff, and then you can start seeing, like, does this make sense, or is somebody trying to, you know, screw us up, basically. So I think that's something that no SOC has been able to do so far. Wouldn't even understand how to do, actually.
Yeah. And besides AI, do you, Travis, think that there is something else that will be disruptive within the area of security for APIs?
I do, actually. So digital identity right now has been very centralized and building very large user stores. And we talked a little bit about Google and sort of localized providers like the Trust Network and Swedish Bank ID, and it's very siloed. And I think that what we'll see in the next few years is a decentralization of that, where users can control their digital ID on a wallet that they have on their smartphone and not have to store it in these huge silos of user databases. And I think that will be perhaps even more disruptive than AI of this API security.
But to your point, culturally, there will be societies who do not want decentralized approach, and then there will be others who absolutely want it.
Yeah,
That's
could
going to
be.
make it even
Could be.
more interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's where hopefully some standards and some technologies can help to harmonize all of that, because that there are cultural differences in the way that we trust and the amount of trust that we place in things and how we approach different solutions. But I think if we can agree on international standards together to decentralize digital identity, then we'll have a much better chance of success.
That's very interesting, and I just want to ask you also, because I know that you have this Nordic API conference that you started, and do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and
Sure.
why you started it?
So Nordic APIs is a conference series that we do twice a year now, once a year in Stockholm and then once in Austin, Texas. And in between the conference, we also have blog posts and ebooks and different things like that on the website. And the reason that we started it was just because there's so much to APIs, and we talk about so many different topics, and it's such a complex thing that we wanted to share the knowledge and bring the community together and have that those two meeting points where we could discuss this live, and then also some sort of online space where we could all get together and share this information. So Nordic APIs is actually coming up here in the fall, and we have a call for papers now, and you can even buy early bird tickets at a discounted price. So encourage you all to come. It's a great conference, and it's sort of the blend of all of the conferences that I love and trying to make it the best show that we can. So highly recommend it.
Actually, it's a great conference.
Have you been there?
I have been to that conference quite many times, and I have actually spoken in that conference.
Me too, and I wouldn't have known about OpenID Connect unless Travis and his team were having Nordic APIs.
Yeah, so that's the point, is really just to spread the knowledge, because there's a lot of things that we work on or that we don't work on related to APIs, and there is such a big part of it, like business models, platform, design, strategy, all that sort of stuff. And at Curity, we're so focused on security that our customers have all these other questions. So it's similar for other businesses too, where it's just too big of a problem and we can't all boil the ocean, but if we come together as a community, we can solve these things.
So how did you decide the name of your company?
Badly. Or Nordic APIs or Curity?
Curity.
Okay, Curity. No, that name is pretty good, but Nordic APIs, that name is very localized and doesn't export super well to Austin, although we have tried.
I can see you have
But
spent a
there
lot
was
of time
Yeah,
thinking.
but there was a good audience in Austin.
There was. So, I mean, eventually it'll just be like, Northern Lights, the search engine, right? Or something. So, but we'll have a bit more work to do there. But how did I come up with the name Curity? Well, it's a totally random name. is what the trademark lawyers will tell me to tell you.
Got it.
There was an early AI version that they asked what to call it.
Eliza was first chatbot, by the way. Yeah, back in 60s or 70s.
Developed by who?
I think it was developed in some research lab,
Yeah.
but I forgot.
Open source.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Lisp was the language.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to the history lesson, there were AI APIs already in 2016. I just want to say, because everybody thinks that AI was born like last year, and that APIs and AI are like very far away from each other. So
Yeah.
yes.
And Mayuki, you've seen this development very closely over the past few years. Is this something that you find most exciting when it comes to maybe AI and API strategy that you're closely working with?
I think now we are getting to the point where it's not hype anymore. It's like reachable to a lot of companies. And I think the thing is, I was sitting accidentally in the flight here next to one of our customers' CEO, and we were discussing this, and he had been invited to a panel where he was supposed to say like, what do you think about AI to other CEOs? And he was like, oh and I think at this point, when a CEO, non-tech CEO of a non-tech company is going to talk about how they're going to use AI, and they have actually already used it, it's a thing. And I think then we know it's real, like it's not hype anymore. And there's also tech around that any developer can actually use to do their own thing. It's just a matter of like creativity and innovation and understanding the business model. And I think that's the heavy lifting part, where companies will still need help. But the tech is easy, people are difficult. It's just the education person here. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you there. Gartner has this thing they call the hype cycle, you know?
Yeah.
And at the top of that, you have all the people clamoring and, you know, pounding on the gong about a technology, and then it kind of falls into this trough of disillusionment, they call it, where it's like, what do we do with this thing? And then it climbs up this slower slope of productivity, where it's like, oh, this is what we do with it. I think we're totally in the hype cycle.
We're in the hype cycle, but we are still like less in a hype cycle that we were like, let's say
maybe some who are early
there
adopters,
are early
they're
adopters,
kind of gone through some disillusionment,
and
maybe, but the whole market as a whole
of
still
course.
in the hype cycle.
I mean, people do think that AI can cure the cancer, kind of like directly, and I think there are still people who don't like. We have this T-shirt made for our team, and another T-shirt which were both made by AI, like the text and the logo, and a lot of people like, oh yeah, that's a nice T-shirt. They don't even understand it's actually super difficult to get a T-shirt like this made by AI, while others are like, no, you can't do that with like ChatGPT. We've tried, and you can't do that. And it's kind of like we're in that situation where if you know what you're doing, you can do stuff like real production stuff with it. But a lot of people still don't even know what to use AI for.
Which will lead to that disillusionment, which I think we're getting to, but we're not.
Well, we're getting to it, but I think there's still so much already going on with like real stuff that I think this is going to be better than blockchain in the early days.
Sure.
I think, and given that AI was already a thing in cloud, you could get yourself an AI, applied AI or otherwise, in 2016. So then it was pretty much hype. Like you could already do some stuff, but nobody even knew that it was there, and certainly didn't know how to deal with it, and it was still limited. Now we have a set of tools that are maturing. Like people said in 2018 when we wrote the API Economic 101 book that, you know, APIs are not the thing, and certainly API economy is not a thing. Like I have had developers tell me, like, how can you say that APIs have something to do with business? They can't have anything to do with business. Are you crazy? And I still had like one person from a customer's team said to me last week that I don't believe in APIs. So I think we're just slightly going like this. And that's why I say that tech is easy, people are difficult.
Yeah, and the technology trends are really funny to follow in the historical development of having, say, machine learning, like we have the trend is starting in mid-90s, no, how is it, 1900s, and then going down, going up, going down, going up. Now we have these accessible solutions, artificial intelligence solutions that are affecting also people who are not really in the tech domain, and
So I
might
think that
might
it's
go down again, might
consumerizing the
Exactly.
whole brand. Yeah.
and then being lifted up again. Maybe one day we have the how is it called? Generative artificial general intelligence, GI, and who knows how it will look in the future, right?
But you should have seen the audience go not so convincing when we asked them in Helsinki that how many believe in quantum computing. Like out of 100 people, 10 people were saying like I believe, and then the researcher, like software researcher Vlad, showed them that here's the Python hello world for quantum, and they're like, oh really? So it starts somewhere.
Yeah. Really. So Jade, your next big thing you're saying is agents. Is that what you're also most excited about in the future when it comes to AI and maybe APIs as well?
Well, I think next big thing could be agents. I don't know for sure, but still I believe in it, and I would like to have agent for my own notes, because I have a lot of I have the habit of writing. So sometimes I do the journaling, and if you know about the concept of brain writing, that means you write your thoughts, and then you can easily look at that journal and then find out information that you have read somewhere and things like that. So I'm facing difficulty finding information in the pile of this journal. So I would love to have an agent who could help me with that. Like it's my own agent, but helping me, my own agent helping me. I hope you get the point.
Yeah.
That's so meta. You are
Yeah.
like asking yourself questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that.
That's so exciting. And Travis, apart from the conference that you are managing, do you have some last recommendations for the audience where you can go to find out more about security for APIs?
So we're writing an O'Reilly book right now. It's going to be a pretty big one talking about cloud native API security. I brought some flyers there, but you can get early access to some of the chapters that have been written already now on our website, curity.io. So there's also a lot of resources on the website already, just besides the book, but those are some things.
Cool. And any last thing that you feel is most exciting about API security and AI, or anything else?
I think like Mariaka was saying, like actually using it and finding productive applications for it, that would be very exciting.
And I am really curious about how old Sajid actually is after Googling the sewing machine and finding out it's invented like 200 years ago. And you remember a time before that?
Well, I was
It's
not
the
born.
AI.
Really?
I was not born that. I'm not that old. But of course, I have been reading, so I have written it in one of my journals. From there, I actually I pull it back, the information. So, but I know definitely you were not alive at that time.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
Is there any questions from the audience to the panel? We've been talking for quite some time now.
Might have a few. That's okay.
Yeah, please.
We'll start with you, Travis. You mentioned the AI being more human moderated. There are some threats where you have to be proactive rather than reactive. Don't you think would it be good to have AI there and put it more in sandbox for those situations, or let's say a DDoS attack? I mean, of course there are some good good approaches to that today.
I mean, the danger is if you fill the model with so much information and train it so well that even if you do have a human in the loop, will that human dare to contradict the machine that's done all of that learning? So then it might, even with a human in the loop, it might just slow them down.
Yeah.
And I think if that's the case, though, the human really has lost its function, and then I think, yeah, the model is what the model is. But do we really want that? Are we really prepared to accept that? I mean, a DDoS is one thing. Launch of a nuclear missile is quite another. So, you know, where's the line? And I think that we need to think about those things very carefully before we pull the human out.
So I was mentioning about the EU AI Act. That has the act is about it classifies AI softwares or AI systems, including generative AI, in a risk-based leveling. So you have unacceptable risk on the top. That is like totally bad. You can't do that. Then you have high risk. Then you have limited risk, and then minimal or low risk and things like that. So I think this is where regulations and laws will work. Like, okay, which kind of systems are okay to have full automation with the help of AI, where human in the loop is required or not required, depending on the risk level of those systems, I would say.
Good that you mentioned, or you talked, next one for you. You were talking about the agents and having these knowledge injections within their thought processes. What if I inject someone that disrupts the next thought process?
Well, that is possible, right?
It is possible, right?
So it's like brainwashing an agent, right? So what you can do, of course, every system will have some loopholes, can have some loopholes, and there are people who would try to exploit it. Let's say, if you know about the prompt injection or jailbreaking the AI model's response.
Mayuka, you were talking about like spitting information that they should not even talk about, like because that was part of their training data. So of course, in the agents world as well, because agents rely on intercepting the thought process. So there is a possibility that you start injecting false thought process or malicious thought process into the agent's thinking, and that will create a lot of problems, because this is where people like Travis will help us do something about it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's a valid reason and very good question, and I don't have the answer like how it would work.
But explain a little bit more, like with the thought process, is that actually a user doing that, or is it someone who programmed the model who is affecting the thought process of an AI?
So when you train a model, so you provide them a lot of data, and in most cases that data is unlabeled.
Right.
That means you do not tell the model whether it is looking at a dog's picture or a cat's picture. It's not labeled, so you do not label anything. So when these models see a lot of data, they get trained on that, and then whenever you ask them some question, I'm talking about the language models, so they will try to give you answer based on the training data. So a lot of information they will see, and they would think, okay, this is the output. But if you ask them a question to solve, let's say if they have to solve a problem, and then you ask them, can you describe your thinking behind the scene? Like, how would you solve that problem? Then, according to a paper, it's a very interesting paper. It's called, it is about chain of thought prompting. A very popular paper. I think it was released in 2023, October sometime. So researchers identified that when you ask these models to describe the steps, then actually they start telling you everything they are thinking about. Like they think about, okay, I will pick, let's say if you ask them about, can you bake a cake? But tell me step by step, how would you do that? And then model will start telling you, okay, well, I will do the mixing first, then I will do the add sugar or add this ingredient and that ingredient, and then I will leave it for 20 minutes for setting something, and it will start giving you all those steps. So during those steps, you can actually inject more information for the AI agent, for the AI model.
And you can also basically steal the model. Like
Exactly.
that has been a real thing even previously, that you can steal a model by just trying different things to it with
Exactly.
an API. So this is making it even more easy in a way.
Exactly.
At least if you have access to similar data or
True.
dangerous version of the similar data.
Yeah. And then you have, you can also like move one thought process of one AI model to another AI model and ask them, okay, can you do some reflection, or can you tell me which one is better, or which option is better?
So you sort of decompose the thoughts and then just do it step by step, and then do something that you
Exactly.
wanted in there, and then it
Exactly.
keeps going.
Exactly.
I got it.
For example, when your AI model, if you ask them what is the weather right now, so and tell me step by step what you will do in order to get the weather. So then your AI model will tell you, okay, I will call this API
Using this
weather.com.
key.
Exactly,
Yeah.
using this key or using these parameters, and this is where you will actually leak the information, right? And that is the time when, because your AI model cannot call the API, so that is the time when you inject your code, it will actually call the API and return the response back, okay, this is the temperature right now. And AI model will think, oh my god, this is part of my thought series. And then it will give you human-like responses.
And I have one last one for you, Maria. And it's more of a comment too when you said developers are using AI. I think we faced that before when Industrial Revolution happened. We also faced it with modern warfare. We saw AI drones. We saw a lot of those things. And I think it's time that the disruption happened in the technology that facilitate the other technologies too. So I think we have bigger problems here that we can focus on once we have these assistants. It could be genome mapping, it could be those 4 trillion galaxies out there. I mean, there are a lot of problems where we still need to concentrate. So I think the jobs will not go away. I think it's more the focus might shift.
Yeah, I think more creativity is needed from humans, like thinking out of the box, because if you don't think out of the box, you can't expect that ChatGPT to think out of the box.
And one more thing regarding the Lego boxes that you presented, I think it's really good because now the Lego itself is made from those machines, but there are people in Lego that actually just build stuff. That's their job. They need to be creative and they build stuff. Of course, AI can do that, but they'll probably not build a shark man or which will catch their eye. I mean, it's catching an eye of a 5-year-old rather than scaring them away. So, yeah.
But maybe scary is that 5-year-olds can start using ChatGPT when they now can speak to it, and then we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, then I would say it's more responsible parenting than AI. So I think that also jumps in there too.
Mom, can I build a nuclear bomb?
Thank you for the questions. We're out of time, but maybe you can catch the panel if you have some additional questions here in the room. Thank you all.